Welcome to Raise 'em Rugged, the podcast for parents wishing to raise confident, adventurous, anti-fragile children who are ready to take on life's challenges. Let's get started. So hello, Lenore. How are you?
So far, so good. I don't know. Let's grill me.
Grill you. Okay. I'm not going to go too deep into your history and background, but anyone listening to this may or may not know your story. I wouldn't know about it if I hadn't come across you in other literature. Your story starts a decade or so ago as you got thrust onto the sort of national stage. You want to do, I imagine you have the elevator script for that one.
I do. What happened is this. The youngest son, who was 9 at the time, started asking me and my husband if we would take him someplace he'd never been before here in New York City, where we live, and let him find his own way home on the subway. This was his dearest wish. We're on the subways all the time. It's not that we're homeless. It's just that that's how you get around in New York City. And so one day we decided, sure. And I took our son to Bloomingdale's, which is a fancy schmancy department store that happens to be right above a subway stop. And I said, okay, today's the day. And I went home by bus. And sure enough, he went into the subway. He took it down to the correct street. He had to take another bus across. He came into our apartment levitating with pride. He'd done something that he felt he was ready for. His parents trusted and believed in him. And I'm a newspaper columnist by trade. What do? We write about our lives when there's nothing left to do. My old editor used to call them bathrobe columns. So I wrote a bathrobe column called Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone. And 2 days later, I was on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and NPR defending myself. And so that weekend, to get my side out, I started a blog called Free Range Kids.
Right.
And then I ended up writing a book called Free Range Kids. And now I'd say there's a movement pretty much called Free Range Kids. And 4 years ago, the movement grew into a nonprofit co-founded by Jonathan Haidt, who you were just mentioning, who wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, and a man named Dan Schuckman, who was chairman of a group that fights for free speech on campus, and a guy named Peter Gray. And I say guy, he's an illustrious psychology professor at Boston College who has spent his professional career studying what happens when kids play with supervision and adult instruction versus free play in mixed age groups. And he thinks that there's almost no similarity between the two activities. One is a class by any other name, and children being taught something by an adult and sort of graded and watched and supervised and assisted. And one is kids learning how to be in the world, which he thinks kids need more of, and so do I.
So that it's fair to say that one subway ride that your son took completely changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. And what's weird is I think it's changed a lot of people's lives at this point. I mean, I hear from people who say, oh, yeah, I read the book and then I started letting my kid do whatever. And I'm glad. I'm trying to think of books that motivated me that way. The point is I don't have any parenting advice per se. All I have is the advice. My advice is this. How come this culture is treating kids today as if they can't do anything safely or successfully without us there, when we all remember being kids and, running around the neighborhood, riding our bikes, staying up till the streetlights came on, going and getting candy, sometimes screwing up, sometimes falling down. And yet that was not considered neglect on the part of our parents, and it wasn't considered outrageously dangerous on the part of society. And now it's evaporating. I think of it evaporating like I think of it as big a loss as the rainforest, something that's been disappearing in our lifetime without people noticing much. And yet it's the oxygen that we need. And so I'm trying to be Al Gore, except for childhood.
For childhood. So 2 thoughts on that. One, I've often, when I have something I'm complaining about, because we all tend to complain, it's like talking about the
me all day long, yes.
Yeah, and I try to catch myself when I say, is this something that if my grandmother heard me complain about this, what would her reaction be? My grandmother had to leave home when she was 13 to become a domestic and worked, had 9 kids, all this stuff, right? Like many in that generation. So if she heard me complain
where was she?
Pardon?
Where was she? In Canada? Or
around here in Canada. Yeah, rural Ontario. It was common, shortly after depression and all that stuff. Right? So would she, and a lot of our grandparents will have, their life was much harder than ours.
Oh. everybody.
Right. So the things we complain about, my wife's mother, when she was a child, they still had outdoor plumbing. She was in rural southern Ontario. This is just in, not that long ago. So
my God, how cold.
Right. Yes, definitely. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what would they say if they heard you complain about that thing you were complaining about right now? And then I often think what you're talking about with children and how much attention all parents put on their kids. And I'll get to sort of the question on this, is that it seems like it's two factors. One, you really hit on real heavy in the book, is how so much of it is media driven out of fear. And then is it just purely a numbers game where parents 50 years ago had so many more children, they couldn't give this kind of attention to their one or two perfect little darlings that got showered with every bit of attention because they couldn't. Which one of those two do you think is the bigger influence on what's happened, or is it kind of both?
I can't possibly determine, this is 62% important, this was 38% important. But I'll talk about the media for a second, because it's not just that the media gives us bad stories. And then I'll talk about family size for a second, because it's not just that we had so many kids we couldn't pay attention to. So with the media, the problem with the media is twofold. One is, as somebody once, everything I learned is I'm a reporter. So people tell me stuff and it's just me repeating things that other people have said. But somebody once said to me that, remember, the media is not there to inform you. The media is there to make money. And once you realize that, you think like, okay, so they can give you a completely skewed picture of the world because that's the one that gets the most eyeballs, which means that the advertisers will pay the most money to advertise on that show. So they'll just feed you anything that makes the numbers go up. And the thing that makes the numbers go up highest is the story of a white middle or upper middle class child kidnapped by a stranger. Simply put, that's Law and Order's been on the air for how long? Since 22 BC, I think. And they figured this out a long time ago, and they will be on forever and ever because that's what they show you, especially the SVU thing. But the problem with that is not only that it's gross and craven and disgusting, it's that your brain works like Google. And if I asked my brain, where can I get a good pastrami sandwich here in New York City? It would list a couple of delis, and I would think that the front page is all I needed because, there's Katz's and there's the Carnegie Deli and whatever. But when I asked my brain, is it safe for my child to wait at the bus stop? The first stories that come up, like the page one of my results, are J.C. Dugard was taken from a bus stop and not seen for 18 years. Eitan Pates was taken from a bus stop and he was murdered. And because these stories are so easy to retrieve, there's a word for this in psychology. It's called the availability heuristic. These are the most available stories to my brain because I can't picture even my own kids waiting at the bus stop for 12 years of school, nothing happening other than being cold and bored. Right? So because those other horrific stories are on the front page of my results, I think they're the most relevant. They're the least relevant because they're the weirdest, wackiest stories, which is why I remember them, the weirdest, worst stories. But my processing brain says, okay, well, this is, can my child stay home, go to the bus stop? No, a child at the bus stop alone gets kidnapped. So the media, by implanting those stories, and of course, the more times you see something, even if it's the same story, like when we watch the Twin Towers fall a million times, it feels like it's happening. If your brain records it as another instance of that horror, not that it was the same one. So the media has sort of rewired our brain to think that very safe things are really unsafe by emphasizing the weirdest anomalies.
Yeah, and then they're not dumb. Like they know that our ancient brains are wired to focus in on the scary thing lurking in the bushes that wants to kill you. And we can't control that.
Right.
That is such a level it's hard to override as an individual.
Right. So that's what it's exploiting. It's like, you're going to pay attention to this. This is, is there a danger in your child's toy box? Come back at 11. I'm like, could you tell me what it is before they die? It's only 9:30.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then you asked about big families, and certainly some of the rules that have sort of sprung up, like some schools won't let your kid get off the school bus in the afternoon unless there's an adult there to walk them home. So obviously if you had 5 kids and 2 were in, grammar school and that got out at a certain time and 1 was in middle school and 2 were in high school, you would have to be spending your entire day at the bus stop waiting for some to come home, ferrying them back, going and getting some others. So the rules that have sort of sprung up with only work with small families. But I think the real change with small families, or maybe that's the biggest, is just that we have enough time for each of them to like just basically be a security detail for each kid. But it's also that if you had maybe dad working and mom home with the 5 kids, you had one income for 7 people. And now you often have 2 incomes for 4 people, which means basically an income for each child. And I think that changes things a lot, because the marketing world knows where the dollars are, and the easiest dollar to get from anyone is the dollar of if you say that my kid is in danger, right? Your kid's going to fall behind, your kid's going to get hurt. Either one, it's setting off the alarm bells, and I buy the new doodad, or I enroll in the class, or I read the book, just because I have the money and the time to do that. And otherwise you're telling me that my child is in danger because I'm so cheap. So I shell out the bucks, and pretty soon, there's all these new precautions that are expected that we're supposed to buy or do that are really icing on the cake. Your child was 99.9% safe, and now they're 99.91% safe. Yeah. And you go, oh, thank God.
So it's almost 3. There's almost 3 tiers there. There's the smaller family, there's the media fear porn, and then there's the more available funds in every household because both spouses are working, and they're all sort of working in unison. And then there's 2 realms of fear. One is fear of actual damage and harm coming to your child. And then there's the fear that, heaven forbid, my golden child doesn't have all the opportunities of every other golden child in the neighborhood as far as everything they're involved with.
Right. And that sounds, kind of cynical, like, my golden child. But if it's sort of like I sent my kids in America, that everybody takes the SATs, which are these college entrance exams. I sent my kids to SAT prep because everybody else was sending their kids to SAT prep. And so if those other kids were all going to get, 10% higher scores, I didn't want my kids to be getting their natural score. I wanted them to be getting 10% higher too. And so it's not an arms race and like, I hate you, or I'm so obsessed with my own kid. It's that if everybody is in Little League and my kid just wants to play in the backyard or go to the park and play, and there's nobody to play with. I did this. My kid was enrolled in Little League too, because it gave me some fun. I got to see the other moms. And that's where the kids were. The kids are not spontaneously showing up, at least where I live, in the parks to play on their own until the street lights come on, at least not anymore.
And I mean, to be cynical, I'm as guilty of it as many. To make sure they've got access to kung fu and access to skiing and access to this.
Yeah.
Things that I didn't have as much of, because we had maybe one sport per season, and the rest of the time you're out in the neighborhood, mucking around, building forts and playing in the creeks.
Which, by the way, is even better than Little League or lessons. But like I said, it's so hard to make that happen once the norm has become everybody else is in a lesson after school. You're not going to muck around the creek by yourself. You're not going to go to the park and throw the ball to yourself. You need kids outside to play with.
Right. So it's sort of like the whole herd has moved in this direction. And if you don't, then your alternative is to play in the sandbox by yourself.
Right. Or basically to come home and watch a screen and play there. And, not even as I mean, that's what my organization Let Grow is dedicated to, sort of like breaking up that ice a little bit, letting getting some space in between there, and just renormalizing the idea of kids being out and about on their own, or out and about, as you say, a boot.
Apparently, we don't hear it, but apparently,
I heard it. The minute you said hi, I was like, oh, he's in Canada, right?
There you go. Yeah. It's not as thick as someone from Minnesota, though.
Peter Gray, who I work with, is from Minnesota. I don't know. I'm saying the boot. No.
They have different ones.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I have a good friend who's just outside of Boston, and he used to poke fun at our accents as being Canadian from a group of us. And I looked at him and I said, you can't poke fun at my accent, man. You're from Boston.
Boston, yeah. I actually like all accents.
Yeah. Very good. So a couple of things I have thought of here. So I had a question to ask you about, how things have 2009 when you hit the news circuit for being the world's worst mom and free range kids.
Actually, I started out just as America's worst mom.
Oh, just as Americans.
Right. It took a while to get to world's worst. So like the Olympic status.
Good to climb the status.
Right. Yeah. There I am, up or down.
We've got, what are we, 13 years ago? Coming on 13 years ago?
My son was 9, now he's 23, so it's like 14.
Wow.
Or almost 14. Whatever, it's a long time.
So a couple questions, and I read your article, your more recent article in Reason magazine, and it sort of answered this, but I'll ask it anyways, is how much has changed since then? Have things gone further towards safetyism and protection, or do you see a big, larger upwelling towards your movement?
It's hard to say because I see both things happening. When I started Free Range Kids, I don't remember 2 years in a row, but for 2 years, like the blogosphere declared me the most controversial mommy blog in the world. And right. I don't think I'm ever controversial. I always think all I'm doing is making sense. I'm a reporter by trade. I spent 14 years at the New York Daily News getting facts. Yeah. And so even when I let my son ride the subway, I knew the facts, that it's extremely safe. Of the 25 largest cities in America, New York is the safest. Our crime rate was about 2,000 murders a year in the 90s. It's down to about 200 a year now. So I'd say that I was considered controversial only because I was rational,
yes.
Weirdly enough, right? Which is why I write for Reason, talk about rationality.
How dare you?
Over the years, yeah, right. How dare I and not be male, right? I think you can be male and rational, but being female and rational, I just am so bad.
That didn't work.
It doesn't work. Actually, I always tell my single girlfriends, if you want to meet guys, come to a libertarian meeting. They're what do they say about libertarians? That they are fiscally conservative and socially awkward.
Socially awkward. Yeah.
It's so true, but there are a lot of them.
I work with rocks and plants and dirt and stuff, and there was a t-shirt my wife wanted to buy for me. It said something like introverted, but we'll talk about horticulture or something.
Yeah, really. Right. Talks to rocks.
Yeah.
Let's talk rocks. Actually, I was a rock hound as a kid. I love rocks. Anyway, so I don't think I'm controversial that way anymore in that people identify with, they say they are free rangers. It's in the dictionary. It's, considered just another sort of way of, another normal choice for raising kids with a little more independence. So that's good. And we've had hard work that paid off. We've had 3 states pass what was originally called the free range parenting law, but is now called the Reasonable Childhood Independence Law, which says that it is not neglect to take your eyes off your kids. So long as you're not putting them in obvious and likely danger, you're allowed to decide when you want your kid to play in the creek, climb a tree, walk to school, play outside. And this year we're trying to get it passed in another 3 states. This year we're working in Colorado, South Carolina, and Nebraska. And already 1/10 of America is covered by our law. And so if we get more, even better. So it can't be that controversial. We have bipartisan support. We have Democrats and Republicans co-sponsoring our law in each of these states, as they did before, because everybody wants to know that they can make a decision about their kids. And so long as they're not putting their kid in real danger, they don't want to be second guessed. They've heard these stories. I've publicized these stories. I have one on reason.com today of somebody sees a kid outside, calls 911, and suddenly there's a case opened on the mom or dad for allowing the kid this kind of crazy freedom, which isn't crazy at all. And we just discussed is statistically safe and also is good for a kid. The kid gets a little bit of street smarts, bravery, friendship, curiosity, all these things blossom when a kid is allowed to follow their interests. You're Mr. Rocks and Minerals. You must have spent a lot of time, I would guess, in the woods, right?
Yeah. And so it's amazing. So you're seeing progress in the right direction. It's amazing that sort of progress has to be like that. These states need to put in a law so that the fact that that's even needed is beyond me insanity. And it's not just in the States. It's like you said in your book, most of the English speaking nations have really gone into this direction for whatever reason that is. So you see some progress as far as the laws, maybe a larger proportion of parents coming to this mindset, but at the same time, the safetyism mindset you still see as fairly strong and growing as well? I
do. And actually, somebody quoted yesterday, there was a good article about this whole topic. And the author, whose name I can't remember, but he did quote this man, Frank Furedi, F-U-R-E-D-I, who I really venerate. He's a sociologist in England. And he said that the fundamental difference today is that risk used to be framed as like something bad that would probably happen. You have to be aware of a risk, right? It's probably, if a place was considered risky, it was because something bad could probably happen. Now it's anything that could possibly happen.
Not probably.
And right. And the example that rankles people, but I must discuss it because it's true, is that a kid waiting in a car for a few minutes while a parent runs an errand is safe, right? Yes. I know that cars can heat up very fast. I know they can get cold. But if a parent is going into the grocery or the dry cleaner or the hardware store, that's not when kids die. Kids die when they are forgotten in cars for the whole workday, or they're forgotten in a car when a parent comes home and forgets to take them out because the car seat is facing backwards and the child has fallen asleep. So to outlaw a kid waiting in a car while the mom is picking up her dress from the dry cleaner and can see through the plate glass window to the car that's 4 feet away from her, because they could possibly be kidnapped. They could possibly, I don't know, be forgotten there because the mother decides dry clean.
Gonna walk home.
I've always wondered how to dry clean. You can't use fantastical what ifs to pretend that a person has made a dangerous decision regarding their children. But we do. We arrest people in cases like this piece I have on Reason today. Mom has 5 kids. The oldest is 14. Normally she takes the younger kids to daycare. Daycare's closed because of COVID. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to get to work. I'll leave the kids home with the 14-year-old babysitter. Well, guess what? The 4-year-old walked outside, saw his friend across the way, and it sounds like it's a busy street, but we're talking about a town of 794 people, not a busy street.
No.
Can't be that busy. Even if everybody was out there, it would not be that busy. But I looked at the picture, there's like literally no cars. So he walks over to his friend's house. The friend's mother takes her son and this kid, 4-year-old, inside. The 14-year-old, who's been doing her remote learning because of COVID, goes, wait a minute, where's Dad? She looks around, he's not there. She said, oh my God, he must have gotten out. I know where he went. He must have gone to his friend's house. She goes to the friend's house, knocks on the door, takes him home. But in the meantime, that mother across the way had called the police. Okay, she's a jerk. That's the way it goes. But the police should drop it. To say that a child getting away proves that the mother has been reckless in allowing the 14-year-old to babysit when the reckless mom was so recklessly going to work on a day when daycare closed. That should not be allowed to proceed. So that kind of thing must end. And it's based on the reason that the sergeant gave for charging the mom with recklessness is that in those 10 to 15 minutes, the child could have been run over, kidnapped, or bitten by a venomous snake. So just because those things could happen, they're all, I sitting here, there could be I'm sitting in front of my window, a ball could come through the window and blind me with shards of glass. A wrecking ball could, a plane could fall from the sky. A bomb could explode. You can't say that my husband was reckless to leave me here today. You just can't make up fears and say, well, see, why wasn't she thinking about that?
It's insanity. It's maybe that because crime rates have gone down so much, these police forces have more time on their hands to harass parents.
I think so. I think that police forces probably did expand when crime was going up, which was the 70s, 80s, and the early 90s. It was spiking.
Never detracted.
You never detract. And also, we are sort of in a culture that has decided that 100% safety is possible. And that's why they're saying, don't leave your kid in the car. Don't leave those triplets in the car for 4 minutes. Drag them across the snowy parking lot, because somehow, if you're only with your children obsessively every single second, nothing bad will ever happen. And the second you aren't with them, something bad will. So imagine if every day you woke up and had to try to convince your fellow countrymen that this is not a prudent and wise and caring way to think. It is a crazy and impossible and vengeful way to think, because you're ready to string up any mom who lets her kid babysit or wait in the car for a few minutes or walk to school.
Yeah, and then it leads to all sorts of other dangers that can affect the social fabric in a neighborhood as well. Like, what's the outcome of that? And then that every one of your neighbors is like not knowing who you can trust, because who's looking to one up you on their parenting prowess over yours. I think it's not a good road to follow.
Of course it isn't. And what I liked is you used the word trust. And if you were talking about the same thing every day for 14 years, you'd think about different angles from time to time too. And the one that interests me lately is the levels of trust in our country are plummeting. Especially among young people. And I'm thinking, well, of course, if you raise them, like, don't go trick or treating, everyone's going to poison your candy. Don't play outside, you're going to be killed by a predator. Don't talk to anybody except me. And do you mind if I put this chip on your watch that will tell me wherever you are at any moment because you're otherwise never safe? So you've rewritten the world as a very dangerous place and nobody trustworthy except yourself. And that's the antithesis of a working country. I mean, the way things work is when you can trust people, you can't trust people. I mean, who do we normally track? We track felons. We put, those ankle bracelets on them and they beep if they go off, past 8:00 and they're not in their house. So to treat the whole world as if everything is dangerous and everybody is either a danger or in danger, that means there's no social fabric. It means nobody is good enough to be trusted by you. And one of the things I worry about, you asked, are things getting better or worse? With technology, with the ability to constantly track and check and basically supervise and panopticon our kids and our neighborhood and our doorbells, right? With the Ring thing, you've created dystopia when you were lucky enough to be living in this era when, as you said, your grandmother would go like, wow, you mean there's plenty of food and there's a safety net and there's no famine and there doesn't seem to be a war on the soil here. No more diphtheria. Are you telling me that? What did I hear? Right? There's no more diphtheria. Wow.
Yeah. No,
but we're treating it like the end times.
Yeah. And, I think about this stuff and just go back to your thoughts on, so the lizard brain where the fear sets in because it's always plugged into you, right? And I allow our children probably to take more taking behaviors than most people I know, and it's not excessive, but I still, even though I'm aware of it, still fall victim to it. I leave them with something and I literally have had those thoughts of they could be gone. Someone's probably come and got them. And I'm like, that is almost non-existent here, period.
Right.
Still is in your head, even from someone who I would say to myself am more aware that this is a tweak in the brain, that it's not reality, but it still gets you. And I'm someone who's read books like yours, right?
I'm someone who wrote books like mine. It gets to me. When my kids were younger and they were coming home and it was dark, after an activity after school, I'm like, gosh, they're going to, I can't wait to see the headline. Really, it's that. So, like, ha, she trusted her kid and now look.
You're exactly right. I've had that thought as well, because I know some other parents that maybe think I let my kids do too many things or whatever it may be. And sometimes I've had fears and I come running into the backyard to make sure they're okay. My first fear is, oh my God, something's wrong. Are they okay? My next fear, and you probably can finish my sentence.
Boy, I think it's like, boy, everybody's going to say, why didn't you? And you deserve this and you got what you deserved and you asshole. The end.
Yep.
Right.
So that's pretty common.
I actually tried. It's extremely common. The thing that interests me about that, because I have it too, is I don't think our parents imagined both things happening. First of all, I don't think they imagined if they let us outside that we were going to be abducted and killed, or they wouldn't have let us outside. It just hadn't taken over the collective brain yet.
Yeah.
But this, the way I hear it said generally, and I think you would agree with this, is that I would never forgive myself.
Yes.
Right. And so people are using that before they let their kids out, and then they don't let their kids out. It's just not worth it. But I would never forgive myself. I mean, think about it with me. I haven't been able to figure out exactly why we're thinking that way. I mean, is it because we're godless people and we can't imagine God forgiving us? And so that leaves it to us and we can't forgive ourselves? Is it because we live in a culture that said, never take your eyes off your kids, and simply taking our eyes off them at all makes us into immoral people? And so we're being punished for our evil trust in the world. I mean, if trust becomes evil, trusting your kid, trusting your community, then those who trust are demonic and shouldn't be forgiven because they're devils. So I get tripped up in this, and I would like to hear your thoughts. Why do we go to, I would never forgive myself? It's not just as simple as I'd be so sad.
Yeah, that idea of forgiveness, and forgiveness needing to come from an otherworldly source that is to a large part forgotten in our society that could play into it. I do think a lot of it is, there is the never forgive yourself part, but I do think a lot of it is that you know that for the rest of eternity, every other person you know is going to look at you like you are the devil for allowing that to happen. When they told you so, we told you were letting do too many risky things. I think a lot of it comes down to that.
But it's interesting. But even being perceived as the devil, as you're talking about, there is something so supernatural embedded in that. And that interests me. It's not like you'll be considered the asshole parent or the jerk, right? You're going to be considered preternaturally evil.
That's right.
And something that was before this. So everyone was rooting for the baby and rooting for the family, as opposed to, I hope he doesn't teach that mom a lesson.
Yes.
Which is almost how I think it might happen today. So I feel like we've decided that, like, we're excited that there's evil in the world that we can point to and shame, or exercise. I mean, we're sort of missing a target that, just plain old evil. And I think that parents who trust their kids in the world are filling in for that for some reason.
Have individuals and families become obviously more independent? There's less, I'd say, larger social circles that sort of band together to raise children than even a generation or two ago, and potentially more competitive in nature in our workforce and with all the organized sports and everything else. I wonder if there's something there that's a combination of sort of that lack of being in a community and being more in a competitive sphere. And it really ties right back to this then too, that you're competing on your ability to parent. And that maybe puts you on, there's something going on there as well at a deeper level.
I'm actually taking notes on this. What's interesting about the competing is that what could feel more wonderful than winning? And you win if the other person loses. Right. So it's not just like, I better be a good parent. I better up my game. It's like rooting for the other side to stumble.
That's right. Because you extra win.
Yeah.
Because if they have to take 3 steps back and while you take 3 steps forward, now you're 6 steps ahead instead of just 3. Right.
Yeah.
And, there could be something there as well. And it's sad that it is that way. But, I'm competitive by nature, being in small business. And it's like, well, do you catch yourself thinking that way sometimes? Probably. It's not great.
Right. There was I took a musical writing class a long time ago, and they quoted some famous composer, and I wish I knew who, but it was like, it's not enough that I succeed, but my friends must fail. Right.
So now, has that just crept into the parenting realm? I guarantee it has, for sure, especially with your kids' achievement, right? Our kids aren't really in organized sports other than real recreational stuff as of right now. But I've heard stories, you have, I'm sure, even at 6 and 8 years old in higher level organized sports, that the insanity.
Oh, sure.
And so they want their kid to be better than all the other kids at all costs, right? So are they going to relish their kids' stumbles?
So let's take a step back. It's not that I think that parents are in this constant war for dominance. It's that I think what we've just lost is the idea that, first of all, not everything is a win or lose. There was something else I wanted to say. It's that, it's really easy to get down on parents, right? To say, oh my God, they put the kid in swimming lessons 5 days a week, and then he has 2 meets on the weekends. What a crazy parent. What an elbowing out of the way parent who, is seething with competition and will win at all costs. But really, like we were talking about before, the kid likes to swim. The coach says, well, he can't just come 2 days a week. He'll get nowhere. You better come 4 days a week. And we have a package, actually, you do 5, and then you get 1 meet free. And pretty soon you're in it, and your kid likes it. And it's like, oh, he likes it. And these are where his friends are. Okay, we'll do it 6 days a week. And so it's not necessarily that it was this rabid, Olympics or die parent there. It's that the culture. And then, like, say you're working and school gets out at 3 and there's a program after school that's chess. Well, then they're in chess, and it's not like you want them to be the next grandmaster. It's that this way you can work till 5 and pick them up on the way home, and they're someplace safe and warm, and they're doing something they enjoy.
Something they enjoy.
So, right. And like we discussed before, even if you wanted them to come home with a key get a sandwich, and go outside and play. You have to worry about somebody calling 911 because they came home with a key and because they see them outside playing and there's no one to play with anyway. And so you see them, spraying graffiti on the door of the school because there's nothing else to do. So we can't blame parents for a culture that insists that anytime kids aren't supervised, they're in danger. And anytime they're not in an activity, they're lying fallow.
Sort of led that way. We're led in this direction.
We're forced.
Yeah.
So let me give a couple of solutions. I gotta go soon. So as I said, Let Grow is the nonprofit that grew from free range kids. And the difference is that Free Range Kids was me doing exactly what you and I have just been doing. Talk for a while. I give lectures all around the world about how did we get so afraid for our kids? What's it doing to them? By the way, it's making them depressed and anxious and passive. What's it doing to us? It's taking all our time and all our money. And it's draining all the creativity and joy out of their lives and all the free time out of ours. So how do we change that? And we've been discussing how you can't have the only child who wants to play outside by themselves. So you really have to come up with a solution that both pushes parents to let go of their kids and normalizes the idea in a whole community. And so, like I said, if you work 14 years on the same program, you come up with some ideas. And so we have two that Let Grow has created, and all of our materials are free. One is called the Let Grow Project. And this is where a school, please come to me, schools, teachers, headmasters, principals, counselors, please come to letgrow.org. And click on the thing that says, thank you. Yeah. Anyways, you click on the thing that says school programs. And the Let Grow Project is a homework assignment teachers give the kids. And all it says is go home and do something new that you always wanted to do, but you haven't done yet for one reason or another on your own. We give a whole list of things you can do, but it's for kids ages 5 to 15. So believe me, there's a million things that aren't on the list that you can come up with. But it's like, climb a tree, make dinner, run an errand, go to the park, visit a friend, go, borrow sugar from the neighbor, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that the parents let go. And they are pushed to let go by the project, because otherwise parents would take another 4 or 5 years before they'd let their kid get on their bike and ride around the neighborhood or let them walk with a friend to the store. So the importance of the project is it pushes the parents to let go. And when the kid comes home with, anywhere from the candy bar to the gallon of milk, depending on what you demanded from your kid, the parent is so excited to see this kid being beaming, but also successful and competent and grown up and wings spread, as opposed to cramped and embryonic and still in the chrysalis. It's like, it's just as exciting to see the kid succeed as it felt good keeping them just completely under your wing. And so parents need to literally see and feel that experience for themselves, not hear me talk about it, not read about it, apparently not watch a television show. I did a whole television series on it. They need to just experience it themselves.
For themselves.
And when they do, it breaks the ice. It breaks the ice of fear around their heart. It breaks the feeling of the kid thinking, I'm not safe. Maybe I'll get hurt. Mom needs, I need my mom there with me. And it's a game changer. And like I said, it's free. The project explanation from our site is a letter for the parents that the school can give them. There's a little empty leaf that you can cut out that says what my project was, and then you fill in the blank. And it was good or bad. And here's what I'm doing next time or whatever. It's just all the materials are there. Schools that do this talk about kids becoming, way more independent. Kids who hated school sometimes like it a little more because they get to talk about something other than their failing grade in math. They could say, I'm building a boat, I'm making a raft, I climbed a tree, right? And teachers see the kid for this whole person, not just the math disaster and the kid who won't raise his hand ever. But as I didn't know that you go to your grandma's house and you babysit her. Or I didn't know that you could make a whole dinner for your family and you're in second grade. That's pretty good. My kids can't do that and they're older. It's just a great thing. And it's particularly great after COVID because, parents and kids have been so Velcroed to each other for 2 years that this is just a very simple way to change it. And then it changes the community because these kids are outside now. We had a place where one kid for his project went to the store and got like a muffin. And everybody was like, why are you here by yourself? It was a kid who was, I don't know what grade, but it was only up till 5th grade. So it was a kid somewhere between kindergarten and 5th grade. He said, I'm doing my Let Grow project. And they're like, what the heck is that? And he explains how I have to do something on my own. And then when other kids started coming into the grocery, it was no big deal so that's one thing that we really would like more schools to do. And the other thing is called the Let Grow, because we brand everything, the Let Grow Play Club. And that is where school stays open before or after school for mixed age, no electronic devices, loose parts, lots of junk, balls, cardboard boxes, free play. There's an adult there, for real emergencies, which are rare, but the kids have to organize their games. They play with whoever they want to. They solve their arguments. And in doing so, they learn all these great skills like compromise and, whatever we were talking about at the beginning, all the skills that you get from free play, communication, frustration tolerance, maturity. And because you have different ages, the older kids throw the ball gently to the younger kids because you don't want to look like a jerk who's 12 trying to strike out a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And so that's the stirrings of empathy and leadership and compassion. And then the younger kids don't want to look like babies. And so they hold themselves together when they normally would be
they step it up.
If they step it up. And it works in neighborhoods that are safe and perfect. And it works in neighborhoods that are dauntingly dangerous because it's at the school where the kids are spending the rest of their day anyway. So once again, if you go to letgrow.org and you click on Play Club or school programs, there's how to organize a play club. And once again, a letter to send home to the parents and a little pledge the parents have to sign. I understand my child will not be happy every second of play club. Right? So they can't say, my kid didn't get a turn. Right? And the kids sign a thing saying, I know that I can't deliberately hurt another kid and I can't go off without alerting an adult. Like I can't just leave. So that's, I think, all you need. You can probably figure it out without downloading any of our materials. But if you want like a little bit of, officialdom there, do it.
Yeah. Well, then you're not just some crazy parent coming with a crazy idea. It's like, this started by the queen of the crazy parents.
That's right. Although I have to say, we've had a couple of studies done at the Play Club that were published in, academic journals saying all sorts of good things.
Sure.
And now we have a professor of psychology who's using the Let Grow project, in a clinical trial with a PhD student. They're using the Let Grow project, kids go out and do something new on your own, as the therapy for anxiety, childhood anxiety. And if it works, that'd be really cool.
Amazing. Yeah. Listen, I have too many questions I'd like to ask. You're short on time. I'll try to do one more that I'm trying to find something that maybe isn't covered in your book or anything else I've come across.
All right, let's hear.
Here, a little thought I had. So I think about this. So many kids are very overprogrammed, overprotected, and this, right? So the ones who are breaking free from this, or the parents are breaking free from this, it's a real opportunity as far as what potential you're creating in your child, right? For them to be able to handle the world, right? So what do you see for the children into the future whose parents are going down this path? They become future leaders? Do they become chastised because they're so brave in a culture that isn't? Or is there somewhere in between? Are they the shining beacons that lead us through this age right now where people don't have reason and are afraid of free speech? Your thoughts on that?
I can't say each individual kid with more independence is going to ferry to, programs 6 days a week. What I can say is that as an age cohort, as independence and freedom have gone down, anxiety, depression, self-harm, and worse, I don't even like talking about it, have gone up. So there's never any one recipe for any kid. And, some kids don't want to get off the couch, even though I'm a free range mom. Why don't you go outside? It's like, no, I want to read my book. So it's not like if you follow my recipe, which even I didn't follow my recipe completely. Trust me, I have a lot of anxiety myself, and I hate the fact that my kids drive because they're older. So there's not a recipe that guarantees, a world leader versus a loser. But I would say that one of the things that I've researched over the years that I like, and you're sort of an example of it, is when kids do get free time to noodle around and for no ulterior motive other than fun, they often find something that really turns them on that can be a source of joy and sometimes employment for the rest of their lives. And I've done some stories about that, just interviewing quote unquote successful people about, can they see a thread from whatever, not for a grade, not for a coach, not for anything else. And can they see a thread from that? I actually once interviewed an astronaut there's an astronaut on 6th Avenue here in New York, which is why I got to live in New York. He remembered something that I think probably you remember too, which is just like playing in the woods and being really far from anything. And, you're on the tree and the branch starts to break and you have to, be brave enough to deal with that or figure out how to get down safely. And he said it was like, being, at the end of the earth. Right. And then he did go to the end of the earth. So there's something to be said for trusting your kids to be human and therefore finding their way to something that they enjoy doing and that it's probably not a waste of time. It's probably something that they love, and you can't love something if it's really easy and stupid. You probably love something that's a little challenging or intriguing, and that's going to serve them well. I just was talking to my friend. Did I tell you this? I was talking about it yesterday. She was telling me what her son loves doing. He's a high school kid, is making models of steamships that sank in the Finger Lakes in the 1800s. Now, there's no way that she would have signed her son up for the model making of sunken steamships from the 1800s, the after school program, right?
Specific to the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, that's where she lives. But the point is that you just got to trust. It's back to trust. You got to trust the kids have some quirky uniqueness to them, some innate curiosity and drive, and some smarts. And you have to stand back and let that part grow. I mean, that's why we're called Let Grow. And I can't guarantee that this kid is going to be, I don't know what jobs there are for people who make models of sunken steamships, but whatever there are, he'll find them, and he'll probably find them faster than, probably find something that calls out to him because he has figured out how to focus and create and think and research and love the world more than just sitting in the back seat on the way to soccer.
Right. Well, if that independence gives something that a human finds passion and enjoyment out of for their life, then that's probably enough. And if
that's a win.
That's a win. If it reduces incidents of teen and 20-something anxiety, depression, and everything else, then that's even a bigger win. So say what you're doing is fantastic. I'm glad we've had this time to chat today. And I've stumbled across your writings and teachings and foundation. We'll look at spreading that around and make any links in the social network that we're starting with this to your programs. I'll be preaching your book to anyone who will listen to me that has children to give it a go, give it a read or a listen. And I thank you for putting pen to paper.
Oh, well, I thank you for linking to me today. Really, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, if their school is interested in doing the project or the play club, I'm just Lenore, Lenore, at letgrow.org. Feel free to drop me a note and I will high five you and give you whatever you need.
Perfect. Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
Maybe we can do it again in 6 months or so.
That sounds cool. All
Perfect.
right.
Thanks.
Good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Raise 'em Rugged podcast. We'll see you again next time as we continue on this parenting journey. Be sure to like, subscribe, download, and rate the show. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media outlets.